The Navy SEALs told me that they have a saying, and here's the saying: nobody rises to a challenge. They laugh at that. So you don't rise to a challenge. You fall to your level of training. Wow, how profound is that in the world of interpersonal performance, relationships? If somebody doesn't have the emotional capacity and hasn't built the emotional regulation inside to rise to the challenge of not saying that snitty comment back, or not getting defensive or getting reactive or even getting, triggered by something somebody says. Okay. If we have developed enough resilience, then we can be in a difficult scenario. And one of my favorite verses is, don't be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. It says in Romans. I like to think of my translation of that verse: don't be overcome by dysfunction, but overcome dysfunction with health, your health. And so, as we train, as we develop, as we get healed inside, as we resolve our triggers, as we get different patterns of resilience that equip us, then when the challenge comes, challenges do. It's just like the SEALs say: we fall to our level of training. Well, what does it mean to fall? Well, think about it. We can be going along fine up here, and then when something hits, what do? We get weighted down with it. But how far do we go down? We go down to our level of training. Think of it this way: you go to a gym, and if you can bench press 150 pounds, that's your level of training. All right. Well, you extend your arms up like this, and I'm going to challenge you, okay? And I'm going to put 300 pounds on there, and I'm going to challenge you to do it. Well, if your muscles aren't strong enough to do it, you're going to fall to your level of training. You're going to fall to whatever strength we have. And that's why capacity building is so, so vital. That's why we equip kids to be able to deal with the wrong kid that comes up to them. We equip kids to be able to deal with scenarios, not so they can rise to the challenge, but so they are prepared for the challenge. And that's what growth is about. And that's my little opening word for us today. That many, 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 many times. Did I say many times? Many times. It's a human condition. We all do it. Many times, the majority of someone's attention is faced on looking at them, the other person, the situation, the externals, the economy, the family climate, whatever it is outside, okay, by the way, that we can't control, okay? There's constant attention and focus and getting riled up. He did this and she didn't, and if they weren't, and they. Of course, that's true. But did it help? You're right. They are like that. Yeah, you're right. You're right. It's tough out there. Yeah, whatever it is, it's hard out there. That's right. I'm not devaluing that. But a lot of times the out there or the he or the she, we can't do a lot about. But what we can do is we can get equipped better to deal with them or they or it. And as we do that through growth, then it's amazing how we can become influencers. Can't control it, but we can influence people. We can influence a relationship. Here's a tip for the day: it only takes one person to change a relationship. Might as well be you. It only takes one to change a relationship. Now, what do I mean by that? Change the other person? No, not necessarily. Get it to a wonderful relationship? No, that takes two. But you can change it by one. In other words, two people are constantly fighting, only takes one to stop fighting. Only takes one to say, I'm not going to expose myself to this. Only takes one to stop fighting and sit down and start maybe getting curious and listening. There's 1,000 different ways in which we can change. But it all has to do with not rising to the challenge, but training, getting better, getting healthier. And here's the thing about that. And I'll close with this before we go to the phones. Sort of. It's a long close here. A lot with this. Here's what's really funny about growth. Are you ready for this? Let me say what the SEALs said. No one rises to the challenge. They fall to their level of training. All right. Guess what happens as you train? The word challenge changes, because what was once challenging for you becomes a piece of cake. You don't even notice it anymore. Why? Because you changed, because you got stronger. Let's take getting upset over things. All right. Well, let's go talk to a 2-year-old. Let's talk to a 2-year-old who's learning how to use their dishes or their milk. Pick it up in the little sippy cuppy, right? And it's a challenge, okay? And they spill it and the milk goes everywhere. What do? They lose it. They lose it. So they're going to rise to the challenge. No, I think the parents start to work, with building emotional regulation, right? All the things you do to teach a kid to, calm down and regulate their emotions and not throw a tantrum and not get upset about stuff and blah 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 blah. Well, you ready for this? I bet you can go into the kitchen today, and I bet you can sit down right there on your kitchen counter, and you can take a little cup that's got 4 ounces of milk in it, and you can spill it. And I bet you won't lose it. I bet you won't start screaming. I bet you won't start going crazy. Are you rising to the challenge, or has your level of training increased where you're able to deal with that better? Now, what if the challenging person in your life, if you looked at it that way, or the challenging situation in your life, if you looked at it that way, what if today that might look like a cup of milk to a toddler? But what if tomorrow, after you say strengthen your boundaries or resolve some triggers or whatever, that the situation doesn't get to you like it used to anymore? Now, some of you are going to, because it is so painful, some of you might hear this as kind of like a discounting of how hard it is, or a discounting of how difficult that person is. I'm not doing that, I promise you, at all. I deal with situations all the time with very, very destructive people and helping people to not be destroyed by a truly destructive person. Okay, so I'm not discounting that this is easy, or that, victimization is a real thing, but so is growth. And what we find is, as people increase their skills, what's so fascinating to me, and I love to see this. There are 80,000 websites out there, wonderful, 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 and books, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. uh, people that have started support groups for people that have been victimized, support groups for people that have been abused, support groups for people that are struggling with this and this and this and this and this. And then you go through a few clicks and you get to the about section of the founder and the person who started this. And they used to be the one that was in pain. And somebody reached out to them and helped them. And what did they do? They got stronger, they got healed. And now what they're able to do is, and I see this all the time, they go do interventions in very difficult situations. They go deal with, angry narcissists in helping couples. They go deal with very different, and they're not afraid of them anymore because they got stronger. So when I say let's develop a herd immunity to dysfunction, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about getting, strong, getting strong. So, that person's manipulation doesn't manipulate you anymore.